They laughed at her in the interview, unaware she was the CEO's wife. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. Rain poured steadily over the quiet streets of Chicago that cold November night. The sidewalks glistened under the streetlights, reflecting the soft hum of passing cars. Emily Carter pulled her thin jacket tighter around her body. Her shoes were soaked, her breath visible in the air. She had just finished her evening shift at the diner, her feet aching, her paycheck already spent on rent and her mother's medication. She stopped under the flickering sign of the train station, clutching her worn leather wallet. Inside was exactly $10. It was supposed to be her dinner and bus fare for the week. The sound of a sneeze broke through the rain. A man sat slumped near the ticket counter, drenched, shivering, and clearly exhausted. His clothes were wrinkled, his beard unshaven, his eyes downcast. Emily hesitated. In a city where everyone rushed past suffering, she stood still. "Sir, are you all right?" she asked softly. The man looked up, startled. His voice was hoarse. "I lost my wallet. I have been trying to get home, but I cannot afford a ticket." For a moment, Emily said nothing. She looked at the crumpled $10 bill in her hand, then at him. The wind whipped her hair across her face, and the smell of wet asphalt filled the air. She took a deep breath, stepped closer, and pressed the bill into his cold hand. "Here," she said. "It is not much, but it should be enough for a ticket." He stared at her, eyes wide. "You are giving me your last money?" Emily smiled faintly, her voice trembling. "I will manage. Just get home safe, all right?" The man swallowed hard, emotion flickering in his gaze. I do not even know your name." "Emily," she replied. "Emily Carter." He nodded slowly. "Thank you, Emily. I will never forget this." She waved off his gratitude, pulling her jacket close again. "Do not worry about it." Then she walked toward the bus stop, her steps light despite the cold. Behind her, the man watched silently, rain dripping from his coat, something unreadable in his eyes. As Emily disappeared into the misty street, she whispered to herself, half smiling, "Kindness does not pay the bills, but maybe it keeps the world alive." What she did not know was that her small act of compassion would soon turn her entire life upside down, because the man she helped that night was not a stranger in need. He was David Carter, the millionaire founder of NovaSpark Technologies. And that $10 bill was about to change both of their destinies forever. Days passed, and the rain did not stop. The city lights blurred through the drizzle, and life moved on. But for Emily Carter, everything felt heavier. Her $10 were gone, her fridge was empty, and her landlord's warnings had turned into eviction threats. She tried to keep her smile at the diner, refilling coffee cups and scrubbing tables long after closing. But the exhaustion behind her eyes was growing harder to hide. Each night, she walked home past the train station where she had met that man. Sometimes she wondered if he had made it home safely. Most of the time, she told herself it did not matter. People came and went in this city, but a small part of her hoped he had kept his promise. The following week, Emily overslept on the morning of her most important job interview. Her bus broke down halfway, and she had to walk the remaining miles through the pouring rain. By the time she reached the office building, her clothes were soaked, her hair clinging to her face. The receptionist gave her a look of quiet pity before asking her to wait. She sat on the leather chair, her heart racing, her stomach empty. When the manager finally called her in, he barely glanced up from his phone. "You are late," he said flatly. "I am so sorry, sir. The bus broke down, and He waved her off. "Everyone has excuses. Let us be honest, Miss Carter. This position requires someone with polish." Emily's hands tightened in her lap. "I understand. I just wanted a chance to prove myself." He smiled thinly, not unkind but dismissive. "You seem nice, but we need someone who can represent the company image." The interview ended as quickly as it began. When she stepped outside, the sky opened again, and she stood there on the sidewalk, letting the rain wash over her face. Her shoes squished with every step. She wanted to cry, but she refused to let the city see her break. That evening, she stopped by the hospital to check on her mother. The beeping monitors, the antiseptic smell, and the sound of the rain on the window all blended into a dull ache. Her mother smiled weakly. "You look tired, sweetheart. Did you get the job?" Emily forced a smile. "Not yet, Mom, but I will." After she left the hospital, she walked home through the same streets where she had met that man. She thought about the way he had looked at her, the sincerity in his voice. She told herself it had meant nothing, but deep down, she remembered the warmth in his eyes, the way he had said her name. The next few days blurred together. She lost her job at the diner when business slowed down. Her rent was overdue. The little she had left went to food and medicine. Every night, she whispered the same line to herself before falling asleep on the couch. "Kindness does not pay the rent, Emily, but it is all you have left. It mind is seven is they sipper less, in the shandet has while." One morning, as she sipped watered-down coffee in the corner of a soup kitchen, she overheard volunteers talking about a new charity event downtown. "It is some tech foundation," one woman said, "run by a young CEO, David Carter. Apparently he is worth millions but goes undercover sometimes to study real problems." Emily's spoon froze midair. The name echoed in her head. David Carter. She shook it off, thinking, no, it cannot be. The man she had met looked nothing like a millionaire. He was quiet, humble, broken. There was no way. Still, that night, when she walked past the glowing poster for the event, the NovaSpark Foundation, Innovation with Compassion, something inside her shifted. The words felt familiar, too familiar. She stopped in front of the glass window, staring at the reflection of her tired face beside the bold letters of his name. The rain outside blurred the edges of her reflection, but one thing became clear in her heart. Her small act of kindness had not disappeared into the night. It was leading her somewhere toward a truth she could not yet see. A week later, the air over Chicago turned colder. The soup kitchen, where Emily sometimes volunteered, was busier than ever. She ladled soup into chipped bowls, smiling softly at every tired face that passed her line. It gave her something to hold on to purpose, even if it did not pay. The door creaked open, letting in a gust of wind and the faint scent of rain. Conversations quieted for a moment as a man stepped inside. He was tall, dressed in a long charcoal coat and polished shoes, his presence almost out of place among the worn tables and flickering lights. Emily looked up and froze, the ladle slipping slightly in her hand. It was him, the man from the train station, the one she had given her last $10 to. But this time, he was different, clean-shaven, confident, and surrounded by an air of quiet authority. Their eyes met across the room, and the noise of the soup kitchen faded into silence. He smiled. Not the tired, hopeless smile she remembered, but one filled with warmth and recognition. He walked straight toward her, his coat brushing lightly against the tables. "Miss Carter," he said, his voice steady and kind. "I have been looking for you." Emily blinked, her heart thudding. "I am sorry. Do I know you?" He chuckled softly. "You gave me $10 at the train station last week." The ladle clattered against the counter. "That was you?" He nodded. "It was. My name is David Carter." He reached into his pocket and handed her a business card. The gold letters gleamed under the fluorescent light. David Carter, CEO, NovaSpark Technologies and Carter Foundation. Her mouth fell open slightly. You are not serious." "I am," he said gently. "I am. That night, I was working undercover for my foundation. We fund programs that help the homeless and underprivileged. I wanted to see the truth for myself. I did not expect to meet someone like you." Emily felt the blood rush to her face. "You mean you were testing people? To see if someone would help you?" "It was not a test," he said quickly. "It was a study, yes, but not of charity, of humanity. I wanted to understand what makes people still care, even when they have nothing left to give. And then you came along." She took a step back, her voice trembling. "You let me think you were stranded. You let me give you my last $10. Do you have any idea what that meant to me?" David's expression softened. "I do now, and I am sorry if I made you feel deceived. That was never my intention." Emily turned away for a moment, trying to catch her breath. The noise of the kitchen returned, voices, clinking dishes, the smell of bread. Her mind swirled between anger and disbelief. He continued quietly, "I could not stop thinking about you, Miss Carter. You gave without hesitation. You reminded me of something I had forgotten, that compassion still exists when success tries to bury it. She said nothing. The ladle trembled in her hand again. He reached into his coat and placed something on the counter, a crisp envelope with her name written in elegant handwriting. I do not want to repay you with money. I want to offer you an opportunity. Come work with me at the foundation. Help me build something real. Emily stared at the envelope, then at him. Why me? Because you already do the work, he said simply. You just have not been paid for it yet. The room fell silent again as she looked into his eyes, seeing the same sincerity she had seen that night in the rain, but now with truth behind it. She did not answer right away. She only whispered, almost to herself, what kind of world tests people's kindness? David's voice was soft. The kind we are both trying to change. Emily stared at the envelope on the counter, her fingers hovering above it but never touching. The noise of the soup kitchen filled the silence between them, the scrape of chairs, the clatter of trays, the faint hum of conversation. Everything felt distant, muffled, unreal. She finally whispered, I do not understand. You could have chosen anyone. You have thousands of people working for you. Why me? David Carter's eyes softened. Because kindness like yours cannot be taught in a boardroom. You did something no one else did. You saw a man who looked invisible and treated him like a person. That is the heart of what my foundation stands for. She shook her head, half laughing, half trembling. I gave you $10, that is all. He smiled faintly. No, you gave me something I could not buy. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. Then Emily sighed and reached for the envelope. Inside was a simple letter on heavy paper. The top read, The Carter Foundation. Beneath it were the words, Position, Program Coordinator, Community Outreach. The salary was more money than she had ever earned in her life. Her throat tightened. I do not know if I can do this. I am not qualified for something like that. You are exactly qualified, David said. I have already spoken with my team. You will have full support and training. All you have to bring is that heart I saw at the station. She hesitated, clutching the letter to her chest. Why are you doing this for me? His expression turned serious. Because I owe you the truth and a chance to believe in people again. You gave when you had nothing. Now let me give you something real in return. The sincerity in his tone broke through the last of her doubt. She nodded slowly. All right, I will try. David's smile reached his eyes for the first time. That is all I ask. The next morning, Emily arrived at the glass tower that housed NovaSpark Technologies. The lobby gleamed with marble floors and soft lighting. She felt out of place in her plain clothes, surrounded by people in tailored suits and polished heels. Still, she held her head high, remembering his words, You saw me when no one else did. A young assistant greeted her warmly. Miss Carter? Mr. Carter is expecting you. She followed the assistant through wide hallways lined with framed photographs of the company's charity projects, food drives, scholarships, disaster relief programs. Her heart swelled as she realized how many lives were touched by this work. When the elevator doors opened to the top floor, David was already there, waiting by the window. The city stretched out behind him, bathed in morning light. He turned and smiled. Welcome to the Carter Foundation, Miss Carter, he said. Are you ready for your first day? She exhaled softly. I am ready to learn. Over the next few weeks, Emily threw herself into the work. She coordinated community drives, visited shelters, and helped launch new outreach programs. David often joined her in the field, not as a boss, but as a partner, listening, helping, and sharing quiet laughter over long nights of planning. For the first time in a long while, Emily felt seen not as a struggling waitress, but as someone who mattered. One evening, as they walked out of the office after another long day, David paused by the elevator. You know, he said, when I met you that night, I thought I was the one doing research. But it turns out, you were teaching me something far greater. Emily smiled. And what was that? He looked at her for a moment before replying. That wealth means nothing without empathy. The elevator doors opened, and they stepped in together. Neither spoke again, but the silence between them no longer felt empty. It felt like the beginning of something quietly extraordinary. Weeks passed, and Emily quickly became one of the most dedicated members of the Carter Foundation. She arrived early every morning, stayed late every night, and treated every person who walked through the doors with the same warmth she had shown that rainy evening at the train station. The volunteers admired her, The staff respected her, but not everyone understood her sudden rise. One afternoon, as she reviewed project reports in the conference room, two senior coordinators whispered near the coffee machine. "She only got this job because she is close to Mr. Carter," one of them muttered. "You do not get hired out of nowhere like that unless there is something going on." Emily pretended not to hear, but the words burned. She knew she had worked for everything, but gossip had a way of spreading faster than truth. That evening, when she packed up her things, she found an anonymous note slipped under her folder. It read, "You cannot fake goodness forever. Sumsray." She sat at her desk long after everyone had gone, staring at the city lights through the window. The doubt crept in quietly. Maybe I do not belong here. The next morning, she avoided David's office, trying to focus on her work. But during the weekly staff meeting, the tension reached its breaking point. A board member, Mr. Langford, cleared his throat and said sharply, "Mr. Carter, there are concerns about Miss Carter's position here. Some feel her employment might compromise professionalism." The room went silent. Emily's heart pounded. She wanted to speak, but David raised his hand. "Compromise?" he repeated calmly. "Would someone like to explain how compassion compromises professionalism?" Mr. Langford hesitated. "It is just unusual, sir. We have a process for recruitment, and this was unconventional." David leaned forward, his voice low but firm. "Unconventional, perhaps? But sometimes the best leaders come from unexpected places." He looked directly at Emily. "When I was undercover, this woman gave me her last $10 without asking for anything in return. Tell me, how many people in this room would have done the same?" The air grew still. No one answered. David continued, his tone softening. "She did not know who I was, and she did not care. That is exactly the kind of heart this foundation needs. If anyone here doubts her qualifications, I suggest they spend one day doing her job." A ripple of quiet murmurs followed. Emily's eyes stung, but she blinked back the tears. The meeting moved on, but something inside her shifted. For the first time, she realized David was not just protecting her reputation, he was honoring her dignity. Later that evening, as they walked out of the building, she stopped by the front steps. "You did not have to defend me," she said softly. David smiled. "I did not defend you, Emily. I told the truth. The rest is theirs to understand." She looked at him, the city lights reflecting in her eyes. "You could have ignored it. You could have let them think whatever they wanted." "I could have," he said, "but I would have betrayed something far more important than image integrity." The moment hung between them, quiet and powerful. Emily's voice trembled slightly. "I do not know what I am supposed to say." "You do not have to say anything," he replied. "Just keep doing what you do best, reminding people that kindness still matters." That night, as she rode the train home, Emily rested her head against the cold glass, watching the city lights fade into the distance. For the first time in a long time, she smiled not because life was easy, but because someone had finally seen her for who she truly was. The following week, Emily noticed a subtle change in the office atmosphere. People greeted her with forced smiles, some avoided eye contact, and conversations often stopped when she entered the room. The tension was quiet but sharp, like a draft in a closed space. One afternoon, while she was preparing documents for the Foundation's annual charity gala, she overheard two board members talking in the hallway. "It is not right," one whispered. "The girl from the diner has no experience running programs." David is letting his emotions cloud his judgment. Emily's hands froze over the papers. Her chest tightened. She waited until their voices faded before gathering her things and leaving the office early. That night, she sat alone in her small apartment, staring at the offer letter still pinned to her wall. For the first time, she wondered if accepting it had been a mistake. "Maybe they are right," she whispered. "Maybe I do not belong in his world." Her phone buzzed with a text from David. "Big day tomorrow. Remember to wear something formal for the gala. I have a surprise to share." She typed a reply, then deleted it. After a long pause, she wrote, "I am not sure if I should come." But before she could hit send, she stopped. Instead, she turned off the phone and sat in silence, the sound of rain tapping against the window. The next evening, the gala hall glowed with golden light. Crystal chandeliers reflected off polished floors, and the city's elite filled the room in shimmering gowns and tailored suits. Emily stood near the back, her simple navy dress a stark contrast to the crowd. Her heart pounded as she watched David on stage, thanking donors and introducing the foundation's upcoming initiatives. When his speech ended, he stepped away from the microphone and scanned the room until his eyes found her. For a moment, the noise of the gala faded. He smiled and motioned for her to join him. Emily shook her head slightly, but he gestured again, encouraging her. Reluctantly, she walked toward the stage, her heels echoing softly on the marble floor. When she reached him, he turned to the audience and spoke into the microphone once more. "Before we continue," he said, "I want to introduce someone very special. Many of you know me as a businessman, but few of you know the story that changed my life." The crowd murmured. David continued, his voice calm and clear. "A few months ago, while working undercover for our outreach program, I met a young woman who gave her last $10 to help a stranger. That act of compassion reminded me why this foundation exists." He turned toward Emily, his eyes filled with quiet pride. "That woman is standing right here." A wave of whispers swept through the crowd. Cameras flashed. Emily froze under the lights, her breath caught in her throat. David smiled gently. "Her name is Emily Carter, and she is not just an employee of this foundation. She is its heart." Applause erupted across the hall. Some clapped politely, others with genuine emotion. Emily's vision blurred for a moment as tears filled her eyes. When the applause faded, she leaned toward him and whispered, "You should not have done that." He smiled softly. "I needed them to know who you are, not because of what you gave me, but because of what you stand for." She took a shaky breath, her voice barely a whisper. "What if they never see me the same way again?" David looked at her, his tone steady and kind. "Then let that be their lesson, not yours." As the orchestra began to play, Emily realized that for the first time, she was no longer invisible. The same heart that had been mocked for its simplicity was now being seen for its strength. And the man who once hid behind disguise was now standing beside her, proud to tell the world the truth. When the gala ended, the echo of applause still lingered in Emily's ears. Guests came up to her, some with genuine smiles, others with polite curiosity. Compliments mixed with questions she did not know how to answer. She thanked them all, her voice calm, though her heart trembled beneath the surface. Later that night, after the last guest had left, she found herself standing alone on the balcony, overlooking the glowing skyline. The air was cool, the city alive beneath her feet, yet inside, she felt strangely small. David joined her quietly, carrying 2 glasses of water instead of champagne. "You disappeared," he said softly. She smiled faintly. "Just needed some air." He handed her the glass. "You were incredible tonight." Emily shook her head. "You should not have done that, David. Announcing me like that in front of everyone, it will only make things harder." He turned toward her, his eyes searching. "Why would it make things harder?" "Because people will talk," she said. "They already do. They will think I am here because of you, not because of what I can do." David sighed, setting his glass down on the railing. "Let them talk. The people who matter know the truth." "Is Ferms of Biles in that meant?" Emily looked at him, her expression pained. "Do they? Or did you just prove them right?" The words slipped out before she could stop them. David froze, the confidence in his eyes dimming slightly. "You think I helped you out of pity?" "I do not know," she admitted, her voice trembling. "Sometimes I wonder if I am just another one of your projects, something to fix, a good story to tell." For a long moment, he said nothing. The wind brushed between them, cool and silent. Finally he spoke, his voice quiet but heavy. "Emily, I have made many mistakes in my life, but pity has never been one of them. You changed me that night. You reminded me of what I had lost. That is not something I could ever repay with charity." She turned away, unable to meet his eyes. "Then why does it still feel like I owe you?" "Because you are not used to being valued," he said softly. "But you do not owe me anything. You earned your place here." Emily swallowed hard, her throat tight. "You make it sound so simple." "It is simple," he replied. "You are here because you belong." Silence settled again. The city lights shimmered below them, the hum of traffic rising like distant music. David stepped closer, his voice low. "You know, when I first started this foundation, I thought success was measured in numbers and how much money we gave, how many lives we touched. But then you came along, and I realized it was not about numbers. It was about intention." She looked up at him, her eyes softening. "And what is your intention now?" He smiled faintly. to build something real. With people who believe, like you do, the tension between them shifted gentler now, but still charged. Emily took a small step back, her heart pounding. I should go, she whispered. It has been a long night. David nodded. I will have a car take you home. As she turned to leave, he called out quietly, Emily. She stopped, glancing back. Do not ever let their voices drown out yours, he said. You are stronger than you think. She nodded once, a small, grateful smile touching her lips before she walked away. That night, as she sat by her apartment window, watching the rain return to the city, Emily replayed his words in her mind. Somewhere deep inside, a truth began to bloom. Their worlds were different, but their hearts had begun to find the same rhythm. Days passed after the gala, and the noise of gossip began to grow louder. Online blogs published photos of Emily and David standing together on stage, their expressions frozen under the bright lights. Headlines spun wild stories: waitress turned foundation favorite, the mysterious woman beside tech tycoon, David Carter. At first, Emily ignored them. She poured herself into work, refusing to read the comments. But one morning when she arrived at the office, she noticed people whispering, their eyes darting toward her and then away. On her desk lay a tabloid magazine with her photo on the cover and a cruel headline beneath it. Her stomach tightened. David entered the room moments later, his jaw set. Do not let this bother you, he said firmly. I will handle it. But she shook her head. You cannot protect me from everything, David. The more you try, the more they will think it is true. He paused, the weight of her words sinking in. Then what do you want me to do? Stay silent while they tear you apart? I want to earn my respect, she said softly, not borrow yours. I won pranked. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them was heavy but honest. Finally, David nodded. Then show them who you are. I will give you the space to do it. That afternoon, Emily asked to lead the presentation for the Foundation's next initiative, a program providing technology training for women in shelters. The board hesitated, some skeptical, others curious. But she insisted, and David, true to his word, said nothing more. When the day came, the conference room was filled with investors, journalists, and partners. Emily stood at the front, her hands steady even though her heart raced. She spoke about second chances, about the dignity of hard work, about how empathy could change communities more than money ever could. Her words carried the weight of truth. She told them about growing up in small apartments, about losing jobs and still choosing kindness. But she never mentioned the night at the train station. That story was not hers to reveal. It was theirs. When she finished, the room was silent for a moment before applause broke out. Hesitant at first, then growing stronger. Even the board members who had doubted her stood and clapped. After the meeting, a reporter approached her. Miss Carter, your story is inspiring. You have turned a lot of opinions around today. Emily smiled gently. It is not about opinions. It is about purpose. Later that evening, David found her in the lobby, standing by the large framed photo of the Foundation's motto, Innovation with Compassion. He looked at her with quiet admiration. You did it, he said. You did not just silence them, you led them. She smiled, her voice soft but steady. I did not do it alone. You believed in me when I did not believe in myself. David stepped closer, his tone low. Believing in you was never the hard part. The hard part was realizing how much you have come to mean to me. She froze, her breath catching in her chest. His words hung in the air, real and unguarded. David, she began, but he shook his head slightly. You do not have to say anything, he said quietly. I just needed you to know. Before she could respond, he reached into his briefcase and pulled out a small glass frame. Inside, pressed neatly behind the glass, was the crumpled $10 bill she had given him that rainy night. He placed it in her hands. I kept this as a reminder, he said softly. That kindness is not weakness. It is strength. Emily's eyes filled with tears as she looked down at the bill. You kept it all this time? I told you I would never forget, he said. In that moment, the noise of gossip, the doubt, the fear, all of it disappeared. There was only the quiet truth between them. One small act of kindness had changed two lives forever. Emily stood in silence, her fingers tracing the edges of the framed $10 bill. It was old and creased, but under the glass, it looked almost sacred, like proof that goodness could survive even in a world obsessed with status. Her voice trembled. All this time, I thought that night did not matter. I thought I was just helping someone get home. David smiled gently. You did more than that. You reminded me what home really means. She looked up at him, her eyes shining. You could have given that bill to someone else, donated it, thrown it away, but you kept it. He nodded. Because it was never just money. It was a promise that if I ever found someone who lived with that kind of heart, I would never let the world treat her as invisible again. In Friends Cert to Stand that of Calavemerment, in Playin by Weeded, and riding the cello paston, tears welled in her eyes, but this time they were not from sadness. She reached up, touching the frame as if it were something fragile and alive. You did not have to save me, David. I did not, he said softly. You saved me first. A quiet moment passed between them. Then he took a small step forward, his voice low but steady. Emily, I have spent my life building things that can be measured in numbers, profits, awards, achievements. But none of them ever filled the emptiness I carried. You did that, without even trying. Her breath caught. David. He smiled, a little nervous this time, almost boyish. I am not asking you for an answer tonight. I just want you to know that what I feel for you is real, not gratitude, not admiration. It is love, the kind that builds, not buys. The city lights glowed through the tall windows, bathing them both in a soft golden hue. Emily could feel her heart racing, every emotion she had buried finally rising to the surface. I do not know what the future holds, she whispered, but I know this, I do not want to keep running from it. He took her hand, his fingers warm around hers. Then do not. For a long time they stood like that, two people from opposite worlds who had somehow met in the middle. The quiet hum of the city faded away until there was nothing left but their shared heartbeat. Later that week, David called a press conference. Cameras flashed, reporters filled the room, and the same journalists who had once written cruel headlines now waited for another story. But what they got was not scandal, it was truth. David stepped up to the podium, Emily by his side. He spoke clearly, his tone calm but firm. The woman beside me is not a rumor. She is the reason this foundation stands for what it does. She is proof that kindness is the greatest investment any of us can make. A hush fell over the crowd. Then applause began, hesitant at first, then louder, growing until it filled the entire hall. When the conference ended, David turned to her and said quietly, "This is not about the world believing in you, Emily. It is about you believing in yourself." She smiled through tears. "I think I finally do." That evening, as they walked out of the building together, the sun dipped below the skyline, painting the sky in hues of gold and rose. David reached into his coat pocket and handed her the framed $10 bill once more. "Keep it," he said. "It started with you. It should end with you." Emily looked at the frame, then at him. "No," she said softly, placing it back in his hands. "It did not end. It just began." He laughed quietly, his eyes shining as he pulled her into a gentle embrace. And for the first time since that cold night at the train station, Emily felt truly warm, not because of the weather, but because she had finally found her place in a world that now believed in the power of a single act of kindness.